This video is sponsored by KlipDraw, a software that we use to edit our videos. If you're interested in using this software too, please see the description below for affiliate links. Big Sam's wet dream, or a striker fit to play in the Champions League? Just how good is Ivan Toney? Considering the fact that Brentford aren't as accomplished as West Ham or Aston Villa going forwards, Toney's XG looks favourable compared to other mid-table strikers. His positioning is better, he's more likely to get in front of goal, and I think he's someone who could be a goal threat at a higher level. Now, technically, I don't think he's shown the same range of finishing that he did when he was in the Championship. At the lower level, he showed more flair and variety. He would try things that were out of the ordinary. You don't see this type of attempt in the Premier League. You see more of this. So getting in on the end of things and showing that poacher's instinct, once again, coming alive inside the box. He has shown that he's a goal threat even against the best teams, but he hasn't been clinical, although he has been accurate. It seems to be that most teams recognise Toney as the main threat coming from Brentford, and they put a lot of bodies in the way, which might explain why his goal scoring hasn't been that impressive. In terms of his dribbling, Toney's got quick feet for a big man. He's a very efficient dribbler. So he's someone who, if he is isolated, he'll be able to hold the ball up and make sure that he gets between players, even in the tightest of spaces. And he's someone you almost have to foul to take the ball off. But he isn't someone who's going to progress the game much. He's not going to go past 3 or 4 players from a defensive situation and turn that into an attacking situation. Most of all, he's looking to draw a foul. In terms of Toney's creativity, he's not below average. I'd say he's average in this respect for a typical orthodox number 9. But he's not someone who's going to match up to the likes of Karim Benzema or Firmino in terms of finding players, getting into pockets of space and threading players through. It's more agricultural, I'd say. It is effective, but he's not going to be someone I'd see leading the line at a Man City or Liverpool. In terms of Toney's link-up play, because he plays for Brentford and it's such a direct team, he's got quite poor possession stats. He seems to give the ball away a lot, and that's probably because he's trying to be very progressive. A lot of the possession he's receiving is under a lot of pressure, and he has to get the ball forward very quickly. I do think he's someone who, in a better team, his possession stats would definitely go up. He seems to have the IQ to keep the ball quite well. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine him demonstrating Lewandowski, Benzema levels of hold-up play. In terms of his long passing, again, due to the fact that he plays for Brentford in a 3-5-2, Toney's relied upon to switch the play quite often and also be quite direct with his passing, so he does utilise the long pass more often than most centre forwards. In terms of accuracy, he's quite decent. He can hit an accurate long pass, so it's quite an important part of his play. Whether it be something that's highly sought after when he goes to a bigger club is questionable, but definitely for a slightly lesser team, it's an important facet of his play. Without a shadow of a doubt, the standout attribute for Toney has to be his heading. He's someone who gets through an inordinate amount of aerial duels per game, and he's almost got a 50% heading success rate as well. So he's quite simply an animal, a beast in the air. He's someone who makes long ball football a viable strategy. He'd be great for a team like Burnley, for example. It reminds me a bit of Calvert-Lewin in this respect. You have to question, how useful this attribute would be in a bigger team. But for a team like Liverpool, a team that crosses the ball a lot, he'd be a great asset to have inside the box. An overlooked facet of Toney's play is the amount of defensive work rate he gets through. Interceptions per 90, he's one of the hardest working centre forwards in the Premier League, arguably Europe. And he doesn't seem like the sort of striker who does put in a shift, but a lot of his work goes unnoticed. He's quite selfless in this respect. He reads the game quite well in terms of when to put the pressure on, and he makes a lot of blindside pressures, which takes midfielders and even centre-backs by surprise. In terms of tactical profile, Toney's not the most difficult player to dissect. Brentford, playing a 3-5-2, he plays as part of that front two, generally as the lead forward. He's someone who Brentford look to use as the focal point. They get the ball into him as quick as possible and then move in support. Once he's laid off that pass, he will look to make a run into the box, and usually they'll try and find a through ball into him. If not, the ball goes out wide to the wing backs and they try and find Toney inside the box, where he generally looks to move towards the far post. Now, if I was to say what sort of teams he would suit from a tactical perspective if he was to play at a higher level, I'd probably say a team like Chelsea, potentially because they play with wing backs, and I can see him being a more effective centre forward than a Lukaku in that Chelsea system. But I couldn't really see him for a Man City or a Liverpool. I don't see him being that calibre of forward to be fluid enough to play in those type of setups. I think his overall movement is too static. But I could also see him at a team like an Atletico, where they love their rugged centre forwards who feed on scraps, so I could see him fitting in well there. In terms of Toney's statistical profile, if we're going to summarise, in reality the only standout attribute is his heading. Nothing else really screams world-class, unique ability that no one else can offer, whereas the aerial side of things really does put him in the upper echelon. So in that sense, he gives an Andy Carroll vibe, but we know from his overall game, he is not that versatile, but he's more gifted, I'd say, than an Andy Carroll, in that he wouldn't look out of place coming on as a substitute for a bigger team. I could see him having that Divock Origi type impact. But that's as far as it goes if we're looking at his game from a statistical impact. In conclusion, Ivan Toney is a standout mid-table striker. He's someone who could be the best of the rest in terms of if we're comparing him to the likes of Calvert-Lewin, Ollie Watkins. I think he's got the potential to be better than them. But based on his age and his statistical profile, I don't see him as someone who's going to suddenly transform into the next Didier Drogba. I don't see enough ceiling in his game for him to do that. I think he's quite rigid. I think he can be quite stiff. I think his range of finishing at the higher level hasn't really been there. Yet Brentford have created enough chances, I think, for him to score more than what he should have. I can't see him playing for the top teams like your Man Cities. I just don't see enough range in his game for that to happen. But I could see him potentially playing for an Atletico Madrid. I think someone like Simeone would enjoy having a centre forward like Toney. So if he is going to play for a bigger club, it has to be a club that really prioritises the physical side of the game. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Please like, share and subscribe, and see you guys again next time. Bye.
Spare for Guardiola, joy for Mourinho.